James Himm Mitchell here, and in this video I'll be doing our tarot card reading for the week of January the 25th, 2016. But before I get into that, I just want to say thank you. If you watched last week's video, then you helped play a part in making it the most watched video that I've had on my channel as far as tarot reading goes to date. So that means a lot to me. I also want to thank you if you've taken the time to like the video, if you took time to share a comment with me, whether it was on my YouTube channel page or it was on my blog or it was in my personal email, because I got a lot of personal messages about how last week's message resonated with you all so much. So I just want to say thank you to that. And I also want to acknowledge all of my subscribers. If you are a current and long-standing subscriber, I want to thank you for blessing me with your presence each and every week, each and every video. I value that. And if you've recently joined on, if you recently subscribed, because over the last 2 weeks I've had a number of new subscribers, I want to say thank you for subscribing and welcome you to the channel. Having you here just means so much. Each and every one of you inspires me, supports me, and encourages me to continue doing what I do on the channel. So I can't have a channel without any of you. So I'm very grateful for your presence. So now, having said that, let's get to this week's reading. And here we are with the cards on the table. And the deck assisting me for this week's reading is a deck that I don't get to use too often. So I thought I'd pull it out and give it a go. And so the deck is the Angel Tarot cards. They are by Doreen Virtue, Radleigh Valentine, and the artwork is by Steve A. Roberts. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the deck in hand, and just as I do in all my weekly general readings, I'm going to shuffle the cards, with the question being, what do we need to know about the week ahead? You know, what can we know to ensure that we have a great week? So as I do that, I'm inviting the angels to be with us. Since this is an angel deck, there will be angels on the cards to assist us. And as I'm shuffling the cards, I'm looking for a card to stick out. The first card will represent the beginning of the week. Second card will represent the middle of the week. And the last card will be rounding out the week. So I'm just taking a moment to line up the cards. Alrighty. So these are the cards, and so I always start by turning the remainder of the deck over and looking at the bottom card. That is going to serve as the foundation or the basis. It could be the underlying energies of the week. So the card is the Dreamer card. And so now the Dreamer is a major arcana card. So major arcana cards, when they appear in a reading, usually carry more weight because they signify important issues or events that we could experience. They also can be cards that represent the spiritual influences or psychological factors that we can experience that help to create the life lessons that we experience. And so that's another facet or aspect of the major arcana cards. For me, they represent life lessons. So now the Dreamer represents a new beginning, a new phase, a new chapter of life. And it can suggest that this new phase or new chapter, we're going into it not having a whole lot of experience. The Dreamer is usually a person who's just starting out on a path or just starting out in some kind of endeavor, and with that, we may not have all the experience needed. This usually represents somebody who is a beginner, somebody who's a novice, somebody who's, if you know that expression, somebody who's green around the edges. That would all suggest a person who's just starting out or a person who doesn't have a whole lot of experience. But the beauty about it is that you learn as you go. This card requires or suggests that it could require a leap of faith, and it actually says a leap of faith on the card. So sometimes what it is that when we're embarking on a new phase or new chapter in our lives, we're not going to know everything going in. And so sometimes because of that, that can either work for us if you are a person who is somewhat of a risk taker or, have a carefree attitude. You may just go with it and understanding it's a new thing and just roll with it. But if you are the cautious person, if you are the one who likes to play it safe, if you're the one who doesn't like things not being known, because the dreamer in this case, it usually is the fool. And so it can suggest some element of the unknown, but the unknown makes a lot of us uncomfortable. So if you're that type of person, then this plays two ways. It could suggest having, like I said, a carefree attitude, willing to take a risk, willing to take a leap of faith, and you just jump in. And sometimes with that, though, it can suggest, being foolish, being reckless. So you might want to consider that or reconsider that. And then if you're the person who likes to play it safe, this card can suggest on some level you're not going to know everything going in, and it's going to require you to have a leap of faith. It's going to require you to have some level of trust and faith that the universe or your higher power, whatever you like to call your higher power, is going to support you in that and is going to provide the next step. Really what it is, it's about just taking the first step. I always think like two things, like watch the first step, or the first step is a doozy, or that the first step usually in a new situation is the hardest one to take, and then once you take the first step, the rest of the steps become easier. In this particular case, if you take the first step, the universe will support you in that and show you what the next step is. You may not be able to see all the way from A to point Z, but if you take step A, step B will present itself. So again, the dreamer is all about embarking on a new phase or a new chapter in your life, and with it, it could require some level of trust because you're not going to know everything going in, and you may not have all the experience, but you will gain it throughout the journey. So now the card that represents the beginning of the week, let's say Monday, Tuesday, is the Two of Fire. Okay, so now fire is, if you follow traditional tarot, fire is the suit of wands. So this is all about having passion, being inspired, being motivated. It's about taking action. So now the Two of Fire is a card that represents like being in a planning stage. So if you are embarking on this new phase, this new experience, this new journey suggested by the Dreamer card, then the Two of Fire is a card that suggests like looking ahead. It's like planning things out before you take any kind of action. So those of you who like to be cautious and kind of play things on the safe side, this is for you, because it represents having a plan and going with the plan, but it's about like looking ahead. This card usually suggests like if the Dreamer card represents a new experience, and sometimes with that it can represent travel, this card would suggest, where do you want to be in the world? Where would you like to be? Because sometimes it can represent an actual move. It would be connected to business, because the Suit of Fire is usually about business, work, enterprises, creative endeavors, things of that nature. But it's all about having a plan. And with that, it may be having the plan on a timetable. So, where would you see yourself, let's say, in a month, 3 months, 6 months down the line? It represents having the timetable. But now here's the thing about plans. Sometimes plans don't always go according to plan. So the 2 is a number of balance. So it could be just like being willing to be flexible and adaptable. It's about having the plan, but if things don't go according to plan, how can you be a little more flexible and adaptable with that? Sometimes too, if we're embarking on a new path and I get the Two of Fire, it's an indication that the path is actually the right path. You're doing the right thing. So that's another element of it. And it also could be like with the Two of Fire at the beginning of the week, we may be looking at our life and being aware of the fact that life is actually a series of choices, and so everything that we have embarked on has been a matter of making a choice. And so it's no different with the Two of Fire. It's like, based on where you are now and where would you like to be, what choices are you willing to make that are going to get you from where you are, which is the point A I talked about in the Dreamer, to the next step, point B, or down the line to point Z. But you have to be willing to kind of come up with a plan and then say, okay, what choices do I make that are going to be in alignment with that plan? Because the Suit of Fire is all about having intention, but also following up the intention with the right courses of action. So, having said that, that is the Two of Fire. So now we're going to move to the middle of the week. And here we have another major arcana card, and this is Unity. So, Unity is a card that represents looking at what it is that we believe. So in the middle of the week, we may be challenged with the idea of, especially if we're planning a new experience or a new journey with the Dreamer, and we're having a plan before venturing out, then in the middle of the week with Unity, we may be challenged with looking at what it is that we believe about certain things. Now, the number 5 in tarot numerology for me can represent like being a free spirit, which is another aspect of the Dreamer. Being a free spirit, it can also be, the adventurer, somebody who wants to see the world, things of that nature. And so the 5 is a very physical oriented number. It's a person who is really into their 5 senses, looks at the world as a very sensual experience or from a sensual place. It's all about the sight, the sounds, how things taste, the touch, all of that boils into a 5 experience. Now, Unity is a card about being with like-minded people. So as you're considering what path you're on and what experience you're moving in, it's about surrounding yourself with people who believe the way that you do. It could also be conversely like you moving away from people who no longer support what it is that you believe, or your belief system may be changing and you may need to find a new community or a new group of people who are supportive of that new belief system or structure. This card can represent one or two things. It could represent going with convention or going against convention. So sometimes with the Dreamer and the Unity, when they show up in the same reading, is that the Dreamer is always asking us to be who we are, be ourselves, be true to who we are. And then sometimes as we go along, we come up into Unity and we are socialized to become just like other people. So there's a little bit of a duality here. Dreamer is all about being who you are, and then Unity comes along and says, that's nice, but you have to fit in. So, there may be for some of us a push-pull kind of energy in the middle of the week about, fitting in and gaining approval, or, a need for approval, and then versus being who we are. And sometimes we may be thinking that if we're going to be who we are and be true to ourselves, that we might not be accepted. So it could mean that. But I'm going to go with the idea that Unity is actually talking about, looking at what it is that you believe. And it could also be, too, that, I talked about learning as you go. This is a card that can represent, like, the institutions of education, higher learning, knowledge, things of that nature. So you may come across either some institution, some group, or a teacher who could help you learn as you go. So that would be the middle of the week. And so now going to the end of the week, oh my, we have another major arcana card. So this is the Strength card, and Strength represents at the end of the week, if we kind of take on what it is that we believe, take a look at that, whether we're going with the crowd, trying to maintain the status quo, that kind of energy, and as well as trying to be true to ourselves. It's like, are we going to be true to ourselves and embrace what makes us unique and different, going back to the Dreamer card, or are we going to run with the crowd and just believe what everybody else believes? By the end of the week, if you take this challenge on, by the end of the week, Strength is about strength of character, inner strength. It represents standing up for yourself, standing up for your convictions, what you believe to be true for you. It's about courage and confidence and self-esteem. So I like it coming after unity because it represents at some level you may be bold enough. This is about standing in your own sense of personal power and your boldness, standing in that. You may also, from this learning experience in the middle of the week, you may actually learn what your strengths are, because I see strength as actually like, what are your strengths are? What are you good at? And how can you move forward in that? So you may actually discover what your strengths are. But the typical meaning of the strength card for me, it's about standing in your own sense of personal strength, being brave, being courageous, things of that nature. Now, strength could also be in terms of when you're dealing with other people and you're dealing with a collective or a group consciousness, which is unity, approaching them not with force. It's like if you believe something differently than the group or whatever is considered to be the norm, which would be the dreamer card, strength is asking you not to approach it like you're trying to force a belief system on someone else that it doesn't resonate with, just as you wouldn't want somebody else to impose a particular belief system on you if it didn't resonate with you. It's about the same thing. The 11 here is a number of balance. It's a one-to-one kind of energy, so it's about balance. And so just remember that if you don't want it imposed on you, don't impose it on somebody else. So that would be like, strength is not like brute force or physical strength. It's really about being gentle, being patient, being loving, because strength is about unconditional love. So how can you meet people who may not agree with you? How can you meet them from a place of being patient, being gentle, and being unconditionally loving with them? You know, they may not believe what you believe, but if their belief system works for who they are and where they're at in their life, then how can you come to a place of accepting that? And as you accept that for them, chances are they will accept you for you, because the energy that you put out is the energy that comes back to you. And so if you're feeling challenged with that this week, the angel on this card is Archangel Ariel, so you can call on her to support you in your becoming confident and standing in your personal power, because her name translates to the lion or lioness of God. So she's like a warrior angel, and you can see in the picture she's got a shield. So you can call on her to help shield you and protect you, along with Archangel Michael, because Archangel Michael is the chief protector angel. But she, let her and Archangel Michael, fight the battle for you, or help you fight the battle in a way that's going to serve and support you and be in service and support of the other person. It's not like you have to be right and let them be wrong, and you have to be wrong and let the other person be right. How can you create a balance with that? So there are only winners and there are no losers. So that would be the strength card. And so I mentioned it with Archangel Ariel, so let me go back with the Dreamer card. And Archangel Metatron is the angel you want to call on if you're embarking on a new thing, because Archangel Metatron always assists us with a new path, a new exploration of something spiritual. So if you're embarking on something new, call on Archangel Metatron to help you, and to help you show you what the next step is, or what it is that you need to focus on, as well as Archangel Michael. I mentioned Archangel Michael up here with Archangel Ariel. Archangel Michael is also the angel to call upon when we need clarity and to need to know what the next step is. With the Unity card, you might want to consider Archangel Sandalphon. Archangel Sandalphon is the one that we want to offer prayers to, because his role is he is the intercessor. So he's the middleman between man and spirit, so to speak. So if you want to have any particular kinds of prayers for assistance in moving through a challenging situation with a group or collective consciousness, then you want to consider Archangel Sandalphon. And he's also the angel that deals with music. So I always tend to think of music as, how can we be in tune, how can we be in harmony with other people? And so Archangel Sandalphon may be able to assist with that. And then with Two of Fire, that would be the suit that's assigned to Archangel Gabriel. And so you know, when we're dealing with people, we could ask for Archangel Gabriel, especially with Mercury still in retrograde this week. How can we have the right words? How can we be clear in our communications with other people? And so we could call on Archangel Gabriel to help us with that. So the next thing we can do is we could look at, even though we have so many major arcana cards, so this is going to be a significant and important week for a lot of us watching this video, what is the overall lesson card? And so we'll get to that in just a moment. And so on our cards we have 2 of Fire is 2. We have the 5 for unity and 11 for strength. So adding those numbers across, we have 2, 5, and 11. 5 and 11. That gives us 18. And so now the 18th major arcana card in the deck is the Moon. And here's the Moon card. So now the Moon, when it comes up, is the first thing that jumps out at me is that we are experiencing a full moon this weekend. I'm shooting this video over the weekend, so we are experiencing a full moon. So this is a time of release. And so we're being asked to, what is it that we need to release and let go of in support of the dreamer so that we can embark on the new thing? Sometimes what has to happen is before we can embrace anything new, we have to be willing to let go of what no longer is serving and supporting us. So if you are watching this and it's during the time of the new moon, that might be the time for you to consider, what is it that I need to release? What is it that I need to let go of? And we will be supported in that. The other thing with the moon, going again with the full moon this week or this weekend, is that there are some of us who are what I call moon sensitive. So as the moon makes its transits and we experience things like the new moon, in this particular case the full moon, we may be feeling some of that energy. So if that is true for you, this is a time for you to kind of honor your self-care, do what you need to do to take care of yourself this week. The other thing with the moon card, when it comes up, it represents being guided by our instincts or our intuition. So we're being asked to honor that process, however you language that. If you are a person who considers your intuition to be like your gut, trusting your gut, then that's what it is. If you're a person who thinks like your intuition is just going on instinct, then that's what it is for you, and you're being asked to do that. Whatever it is for you, the moon card is asking us to do that. The other thing with the moon card when it comes up, it represents in this process of releasing that we may be engaged in, it may bring up fears about the letting go process, especially if part of it is part of your identity and who you have come to believe, who you are about yourself. And I'm seeing that in relation to the dichotomy or the contrast between unity and the dreamer. So there may be some roles or issues with identity that we're dealing with, and sometimes with that is like if we let go of a certain role or a belief about an identity that we have taken on, we can sometimes say, well, if I let that go, then who am I? And so there may be some fear or some resistance in letting that go. But it may come up because it needs to let go. If you're exploring who you are and who you're becoming, then old ways of being may need to be released because you no longer need them. The other thing about the moon card when it talks about fears, it could also be about releasing the fears about embarking on something new. Anytime we create change in any kind of way, it always carries that element of the unknown, and that can bring up a lot of fears. And so if fears come up with the idea of releasing something or embracing something new, then honor the fears, let them come up, because the only way they can be healed is if you allow them to come up and you look at them, because the moon card is all about reflection, it's self-reflection, and you look at them and then allow them to come up so they can be healed, and then it will enable you to release whatever it is you need to release and embrace whatever it is you need to embrace so that you can move on. The other thing that for me the moon card is that it warns us of being highly sensitive. And I know this for sure, my experience with full moons especially, I used to work in retail, and I think I've said this in previous readings. I worked in retail, so I was around the public a lot. And I used to always get concerned whenever there was a full moon and I had to go to work. I had to be around people because it seemed like that would be the time when people are really sensitive, not just myself, but sensitive across the board. And when people are really emotionally sensitive, they can be triggered, and just like that, they can trigger us. So be mindful of, as you're engaging with other people, and this may be where Gabriel comes back into play with the idea of communicating with people. Be mindful of the words that you speak or anything that you write, because you don't want to trigger somebody else with possible miscommunication or misperception or a misunderstanding, things of that nature. That's all kind of full moon energy. And so, if you're going to communicate to people, then how can you make sure that your words are understandable, that you're getting your point across clearly, that there's no room for a misunderstanding or triggering somebody on an emotional level because they're just not getting what it is that you're trying to say to them. So be mindful of that. So that's the energy of the moon. So summing up our cards for the week, Two of Fire at the beginning of the week is asking us to consider, if we're embarking on something new, what kind of plan do we have that's going to help us move forward? And then how can we go about putting that plan into motion? The Two of Fire is actually a waiting card. It says this is a time to step back and create the plan before venturing out. Unity is a card that in the middle of the week we might experience, being in a place of asking ourselves what it is that we really believe. Do we believe the way that we have been conditioned and programmed to believe in accordance to the communities or the groups that we have been associating ourselves with? Or is it time to break free from that and kind of explore some new belief systems, some new ways of learning, some new ways of being? In the middle of the week, we may actually deal with the idea or the experience of seeking approval, a need for approval, and if that is true for you, ask yourself, what is it that I'm seeking through this experience of needing to be approved of? So I'm seeing that as an energy with the middle of the week. And at the end of the week with Strength card, this is about standing in your own sense of strength and personal power. It's about you being courageous, you being brave. It's also about you getting to a place where you understand what your strengths are. This is about your strength of character. That's actually your biggest strength, is your strength of character. But you're getting more in touch with that this week. So this has been your week in Tarot. I am James Himm Mitchell, and I look forward to sharing this space here with you again in our next video. And until then, I hope you have a tarot-tastic week, and take care.